Before we begin, please be advised that this show may contain some adult themes that may not be appropriate for all listeners. Use your discretion. Now, on to our show. Welcome to the Sip and Saga Society, where we cover histories, mysteries, and overall weird-ass shit. My name is Karina, and joining us today, as always, we have Christina.
Hello.
That's cute. What are you sipping, Christina?
I'm you get raspy me because I'm fighting allergies.
It's allergy season.
Um, it's so bad. But I just have a lemon ginger tea. I have it also for other reasons, but other than being sick. Um, but yeah, I'm just trying to get better, that's all. And some water.
I feel like I'm trying to survive.
I'm just trying to make it.
And today we also have a new friend, my friend Greg. Yay, Greg!
Yay!
Hey,
I'm so excited to have Greg today because he like actually knows things about history and didn't just read a book and then make your friends listen to it. So I'm excited about that. What are you sipping, Greg?
I came prepared because I listened to some of y'all's episodes and figured out like that I needed to have that. So I have a gin and soda that I made with this Ora Bora lime cardamom sparkling beverage.
That sounds good. Lime and cardamom?
Yeah, it's really good by itself, but it says use as a mixer, and so I said gin would go
That sounds
pretty
like
well
gin
on that.
would go with that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. And then I just went to the liquor store, so I'm sampling stuff. I got some barrel-aged imperial stout called the Abyss,
Oh, I was
and
going with survival theme, so that I'm
yeah,
on brand.
and I bought this IPA just because the name was funny. It's the Hoochie Coochie
I love
IPA
that.
by Soul and Spirits Brewery.
That's a callback to our like third episode on pole dance.
hmm
It was the hoochie coochie is what they called the I think the dancers that would dance like in the middle of the circus pole. Wasn't it that one, Chrissy?
I
I
think
mean,
it
it was a
was.
long time
Yeah,
ago.
yeah.
That's what the dance was called. And finally, we have Randy. Yay,
Hi.
Randy, who also has a fun topic with us after she tells us what she's sipping. Well, maybe I'll tell you what I'm sipping first. I don't know. Go, Randy,
Okay,
go.
well, I'll tell you that I am drinking my Chipotle Mr. Pibb, one of the
Oh,
only acceptable swap outs for Dr. Pepper, and a glass of ice cold water. Because it's not ice cold, I don't want it.
Same girl,
I
same.
love the
Hmm.
standards. Yes. Before Randy gets started, I'm just drinking a whiskey cocktail. I have to open it first, but it's whiskey, spicy, ginger, and orange by the brand Two Chicks. It's
I
so
can't
freaking
tell if I
cute.
would like that. The
Cool.
can is very cute.
Mm. I've had one of their lemon ones and they were
And you
delicious.
like it? Yeah.
Anyway, but Randy, what are you talking about today?
I am talking about surprising sexual practices of the colonists because today's discussion is just going to be a continuation of the last episode. Rather than focusing on an individual, I thought let's kind of get to know these people we're going to be talking about.
I love that because you know what people don't ever stop doing? Having sex.
That's true.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm I'm hoping that you're all familiar with like the more common sexual practices of that area, the like common knowledge topics. Brothels were widely available, as was pornographic literature and photography. Religious leaders made attempts to dictate the bedroom behaviors of the colonists, and public health really was not much of a thing yet. So, adding in a need for practicality and a ratio of 3 men to every woman, you get an interesting mess of colonial contradictions. So, up first, let's talk about bundling and the use of bed boards. So, A common dating practice in colonial times was the tradition of bundling, where a young couple would share a bed in the girl's home with some sort of separation between them. So this separation could have been a bedboard, which was attached at either end of the bed and would run down the middle of the bed so that the man would sleep on one side and the woman on the other. If a bedboard couldn't be affixed, there would be a plank, like just a board plank that they would put in the middle. Or they would sew a sheet down the middle so the couple would be physically separated, but still be able to lie next to each other. In the absence of these things, it was considered acceptable for the boy to simply remain fully clothed while they were sleeping in the bed.
Was it not acceptable if they didn't have like, okay, if there was the board
They
there,
could
could he take
take
his
their
clothes off?
they could take their pants off and such if they were actually physically divided. But if there was
Oh.
no separation, he had to keep his clothes on.
But
And
she
I'm
didn't have
sure,
to.
well, they just really only mentioned
Oh,
the
okay.
breeches.
You know they only care about what the men are
I
doing.
know.
Come
I was
on.
like,
Well, you know what's funny when you if you want to think about the effectiveness of that, on average. So my area of history is colonial New England. That's like what I specialize in. So I've read a
Okay.
lot on that. So this is for New England specifically, but I've read in a lot of scholarship about like families and children and stuff like that. That like the average child, if you look at like the birth and baptismal and marriage records, the average first child comes in about like 6 to 7 months, which suggests
Mm-hmm.
they're all very premature.
Yes.
Or
That is
mom and
actually,
dad.
you're getting ahead of yourself, Greg. That's actually going to be our fact number 3.
Oh
So
shoot,
that's
I'm
okay.
sorry.
It's okay. It's what happens when you have
No,
people
it's
that
so
know too
true.
much.
and then
It's
you
so
have me
true,
and I know
though.
nothing. Greg, if you, just to preface, like when y'all tell me something is brand new to me, I don't know why I didn't learn anything in school or
Oh,
nothing
real talk? I
pertained.
had no idea what bundling was until like
Yeah.
literally right now.
Yeah.
I thought Randy was going to cover like, you know how we were talking about when babies like rocking the babies, how the like indigenous
Oh,
people used to put the babies
swaddling?
on the
Oh.
boards, like baby boards.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
That's what I
Mm-hmm.
was thinking. I was not thinking about sex. That's why when you were like, I'm going to talk about sex today, I was like, oh, fun. None of that was connected.
Yeah.
This is a good
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. No, I wanted, after the heaviness of Christopher Columbus, I wanted something a lot more fun.
Oh, speaking of Christopher Columbus, I posted I am on Bumble BFF because I like to make friends wherever I go. And
Obviously, that's
actually,
where we met.
fun, yeah, Randy and I met on Bumble BFF and it worked out
Yeah.
fine. Look at us. So I put our last post about Christopher Columbus, I put it on my Bumble BFF profile. Y'all,
Mm-hmm.
it got reported. It
When
got
you said that, what do
Right?
you mean by that?
They reported
Like
the
they
photo
flagged
of
it?
yes, and they made me delete it, or they were going to delete my account.
That's
A cri-
wild.
What?
Because it was literally the post I sent y'all, where it's like, Randy talks about the
Mhm.
title is Horrors of Exploration. And I said, Randy talks about how terrible Christopher Columbus was. And I introduced
Mhm.
Roanoke. That was it. It wasn't like I was like, he's a piece of shit. Every colonizer is an asshole. Like, I wasn't like hateful. I just was like, hey, he's not great. And somebody reported it. I want to be more of a menace, but I'm waiting. Anyway, I just thought it was ridiculous. I was so mad.
That is ridiculous. Although I'm kind of trying to picture the kind of person that would report that. And
Exactly. And then I'm
yeah,
like, I think I'm good.
yeah,
But
I don't
then
think
okay.
you're missing anything.
No, I'm aware, but then it makes me kind of be chaotic and like I want to change. I want to add even more stuff and be like, and that thing I told you, what was it? If what was it? You look like the type of person that would
Oh,
support
yes.
defend Christopher Columbus.
Hmm.
Because we saw a car and we were like, you know who drives that car? And I was like, the kind of person that would defend Christopher Columbus. And Evan was like, yup. Anyway, sorry, Randy. Sorry for the tangent.
No, you're fine. Okay.
Yes, the bed.
I also, now, Greg, you're gonna have to correct me if any of these facts are wrong, because that would be embarrassing, and I'd rather be corrected
Well,
now.
I will say that studying like Puritan sects is not something I've done a lot of. I've studied the Puritans in a lot of way, but that's not something I've done closely. So
Why,
I feel like I'm
Greg?
going to learn some stuff too.
Why wasn't
Okay.
that the first order of business?
Yeah, this is
My
what I'm
thesis
interested
was
in.
on sex bundle, on the bundling of
Your thesis would be on sex bundling,
it.
Karina, so
Honestly, yeah, it was.
actually.
I would do
Okay.
that.
So it was thought that bundling would allow the couple time to get to know each other in a more intimate way. Intimate indeed. Bundling did not seem to overly impact the reputation of the man or the woman involved. So, because of this, the practice was not exclusively reserved for serious courtship. This was especially true when weather was harsh and it would become necessary to harbor guests overnight. It created additional warmth. They had to furnish less rooms of the house. And oftentimes the bundling would be done in the room with the parents. So the couple would be lying in a bed near the parents. But it was not entirely uncommon for the girl to have a separate bedroom. So that was also a possibility. More popular suitors would spend nights in multiple homes in the course of the year. So I'm sure you can imagine how chaste these air quote couples remained during those nights. Leading to our next interesting fact, the one that Greg mentioned earlier. There were high rates of premarital pregnancy. Okay. Noted historian Richard, I'm going to butcher this name because it's Godbeer. Richard
Hmm.
Godbeer. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's
right.
right.
Okay, great.
Actually,
Richard Godbeer. He puts the rates of premarital pregnancy in the late 18th century at 30 to 40%. So it was not at all uncommon for a bride to be seen marrying while pregnant. In fact, an estimated 1 in 3 women were carrying during the marital ceremony. So our old friend Washington Irving commented on that tradition of bundling, and how it could be considered largely responsible for the early population boom of colonial New England, quoting, "For it is a certain fact, well authenticated by court records and parish registers, that wherever the practice of bundling prevailed, there was an amazing number of sturdy brats annually born unto the state without the license of law or the benefit of clergy."
Where the people are bundling, there's children. I wonder
Bumping in the
why.
night.
yeah. I'm writing this book actually on a minister from New England that nobody's ever written like a full biography on. That's like the big project I'm working on, like within my job. And there's this really interesting, so I've read a lot of his diary. So he's got a really well preserved diary. And I've read a lot of that especially in like the American Revolution period, because that's one of the chapters I've written most recently for his life. And he has this moment where there's this kid in the town who gets a girl pregnant before she's married, and he's kind of like it's expected that he'll marry her. And so I kind of like followed that within his diary where he was, sort of kind of pressuring, like making sure that this couple got married. So I think it's a lot more common and just expected at that time
Hmm.
that this happens. And it's kind of like, if it happens, it's like, well, y'all got to get married now.
Oh, I feel like that was the case for most of until recently. Like, if you're pregnant, you get married. Like, that's not
Yeah.
even,
I
I feel
feel like
like up
that's just
to
a
like the 80s, it
long-standing
was,
tradition, where it's kind of like
Hmm.
it happens and then it's like, well, this is the expectation.
yeah, exactly.
Well, I
Oh,
could I could definitely see that being the case, especially the more religious the society was. Like one of
yeah.
the
Yeah.
things I'm going to talk about later is the prevalence of abortion in some of the colonies. And that again, we're talking about contradictions. What a wild contradiction to be, these religious societies hell bent on purity, but expecting premarital sex and pregnancy. Um, Allowing abortion but being displeased by it, so you're ruining a reputation. You have adulterers, you're burning A's on women's cheeks. If they're crazy, honestly. That's my
I
whole
mean,
point.
that's
They're wild.
humanity. Humanity be crazy, like from the beginning to the end, to right now,
Hmm.
every day, all of us.
Hmm. we're pregnant. Now what? Common law marriages at the time were also normal and could be performed with or without the presence of witnesses, which I thought was particularly interesting. So, legal church marriages could be expensive, in some cases, costing the amount of a year's salary, making it unrealistic for many couples to obtain that documentation. So instead, there would be different kind of ceremonies or things that they could do to establish that they had actually come together and formed a union. So there would be hand fasting ceremonies with an exchange of vows. And as long as the couple swore under oath that the ceremony had been performed, the common law marriage was upheld. Another option was the announcement of the union in Sunday messages at the parish. Banns is a notice read on 3 successive Sundays in a parish announcing the intended marriage and giving opportunity for objections. So that was kind of how they did things. Way simpler than what we do now. But they were allowed to just have these common law marriages that were approved by the families and the people in the community, and were respected as such.
Do they just be like, okay, like if I just met this guy and we were like we got pregnant, right? Could I just be like, we did a hand fasting, nobody was there, it was just
As
us,
long
but
as
like
you both
agreed
said
to do it.
yes.
It's like, oh, then we were married before it happened. Oh, fixed it. Like,
Yeah. I
as
mean,
long as we
technically,
both
yes.
agreed to say the same story, I think it's fine. You don't even have to do the hand fasting.
Well,
I mean, you probably need a
hopefully
priest or
they
something.
still did. No, I mean, that was a way to circumvent the church and the state.
Oh, so it was just them.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
It was literally them or them and their families or them and their families and friends. Like it was their
Nice.
own situation.
Well, I think it was before like marriage was more family business versus what it is now. Like literally business.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you got pregnant, then it was something else.
That still sounds like business.
It's a different type of business.
So, however, if a woman found herself in a situation she didn't wish to be, she often had full access to abortion services. So, many tribal societies and midwives of the time knew how to induce an abortion with the utilization of herbs or other methods. I'm going to take a moment here to note that the midwives of the time were extremely competent providers of women's services. They were often more skilled than physicians in birth and provided a wide range of care, including birth control and other sort of abortion services like what we're talking about now. So, major shout out to those women. While the legality of abortion changed by European country, for British and French colonies, abortions were known to occur. So, for the British colonies, an abortion could be performed prior to the quickening or the mother feeling the fetus move for the first time.
Mm.
In French colonies, abortion was illegal, but they were still frequently performed because of cultural standards. So, it was like the government said no, but the people were like, that doesn't make sense to us, so we're going to keep doing
We're just gonna keep doing it.
this.
Well, but also if you're a colony, it's not like you're close by.
Right,
What are they gonna
right.
do?
Those charters are a guide. In Spanish and Portuguese colonies,
Suggestion.
abortion was illegal and socially unacceptable, but underground sources were available. So it actually wasn't until the mid 1800s that American states started to pass anti-abortion legislation. And kind of what you were talking about, Karina, those penalties got more and more strict.
Yeah.
Blended families were also quite normal for the time. So the mortality rate in colonial America was quite high because of disease, starvation, stupidity, all of the things that I'm sure Karina will mention later when she's talking about them. But it was imperative for settlers to increase their population and solidify their hold in the New World. So I'm going to mention again the ratio of women to men. They're commonly being 3-2 or 3-1, and in some areas as harsh as 6-1. This scarcity drove a disturbing custom known as graveside courting. It is exactly how it sounds. In an effort to secure the hand of a recent widow in marriage, courtship needed to begin as soon as possible. No better place to woo a woman than while she's burying her old husband, I guess.
No, I don't want that. I don't want that life.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, that seems so traumatizing.
How do you even approach that conversation? Hey, Christina, I know he's still warm, but
I know he's still
You know
warm.
Well,
what I
but
love also about this? It wasn't like it was always one person at the graveside courting. Like these were the
no.
single men of the community that were
So it's
trying
not
to
just like
get
the
to this
guy that's been
woman.
trying to hit on you for like months. It's
No,
like
it's the
every
single
single guy in
men of the
town.
community know about this man dying. And are like, oh, we need to get a woman. No
I mean,
time
how
to
many people
waste.
are in the town? Like, really? How many people are in the town? There's
It's a
like 20
matter of
guys here.
survival. It is
Yeah.
a
so
matter of survival.
you know what? So I have read a little bit on some of this, and men who were widowed, who lost their wives, usually marry very quickly. Like the guy I'm writing a book on has this happen, and he marries somebody like 6 months later.
Mm.
It's very quick, right? Like I buried my wife, I found someone else, I got married like 6 months later. I think she's a widow as well. But oftentimes widows tried to avoid marrying, especially in like colonial New England, because they could still manage their estate and control their property. And so there's a lot of women who just choose not to marry and fend off all of those people if they can, because they want to do their own thing and be independent.
Oh, I love that for them.
I know.
I
Yeah.
really love that for them.
And you're like taken care of. You don't need a man. It's not improper for you to be in the street because you are a widow. You've been married.
But
Hmm.
a
You
lot of
have
wills
rights.
have like a widow's third, right? So it's like the widow controls the property until she marries, and then she gets like she has a third that she can pass down to her descendants, like from her first marriage, but then the other two-thirds goes to her new husband.
Oh, but I mean, even then, that's still keeping more than
Yeah,
what.
you still get something, but that's why a lot of women wanted to avoid getting married again entirely, because you get to control 100% of it and pass it down
Hmm.
to your kids, you know, and do whatever you want to do.
So, Randy, when you say that it was like 1 and 3 or like 1 and 6,
Mhm.
I guess I'm
Six
just trying to
men to one
process.
woman,
And it's just
three
the
men to one
same
woman.
the same woman, not at the same time, but like as far as if someone
Yeah.
is
Hmm.
passing, then
Like if there was a town of 40 people,
hmm
there would be 30 men and 10 women.
but they would kind of cycle the same women
No,
It would
ish.
be
Christina.
30 men and 10 women.
They would just
That's
get
the whole
married. So only 10
colony.
of them would be married.
And the other
And
20 would just be laborers or
Hmm.
until someone
workers.
dies, right?
Yeah. And that's why all
Yes.
those
I
20
see,
men
I
are
see.
like at the
Okay, okay,
graveside.
Yes.
okay.
Yes. Or they
Okay,
go to
I
the
got it.
country and bundle some
Oh, shut up,
pumpkin.
Randy, you and your bundling. This traveler needs a place to sleep, but we put up a board, so it's fine. Oh my God.
Well, interesting segue. So, not a custom, but definitely a side effect of these practices. Let's talk STDs.
Yes,
So,
perfect.
due to the need for trade and further exploration, these hotspots for commodity also turned into hotspots of debauchery. As the church would have you remember, sex can, in fact, be dangerous. Sailors, travelers, and merchants spread known and novel venereal disease such as syphilis and gonorrhea throughout those port towns. As there were no medical cures and very poor public health measures, if any at all, these diseases spread rapidly into the cities and homes. This is especially true in the unfortunate cases of sexually exploited women and enslaved women who were raped. Colonial times were a mess of sexual freedom and repression. Doesn't that sound familiar? Between Mormons soaking, modern birth control, and abstinence only teaching, America still seems to be fighting itself. Okay, that's the end of my fun little time.
Damn, Randy, that was deep. You went real serious, and I just felt bad about cackling for a second. But I did write it down. I'm gonna make quotes as a post, and that's a good one. Sex, in fact, can be dangerous. Um,
It can. My
I
schooling would
mean,
have you believe that.
I mean, I've watched
What's the
Mean
Mean
Girls. That's
Girls
just
quote?
science.
Yeah.
Yeah. You will die. You will get pregnant and you will die. Uh,
The
classic.
whole Mormon and the soaking thing is never like it's not that I ever thought that that's not real because like obviously anyone can do anything, right? If you put your mind to it long enough, I guess.
If you
But it
put your
was
mind to it.
if you put your mind to it, you can do it. But it was crazy because the first time that I heard it, and like really was like listening, like paying attention to what I was hearing, was when like my husband was talking about it because it was like him and a friend and they were like making a joke and um they had said something about it was kind of like a what is it? It's like a phrase because like one of them got hurt and they were just like, "Oh, they said something," and they were like, "Just soak it in cider." And so in my head, I heard soak it in cider.
Cider.
And so
Cider.
I was like, "What is that gonna do?"
Apple
Ew.
And
cider.
yeah, and I'm like sitting there like like that sounds ridiculous. And so I was like asking about it and finally like my husband was like, "No," like he's like, "You're not getting like the play on words." And like so he told me and then they brought up the whole like soaking thing with the Mormons. And then he was like they were saying something and they were like, "Yeah." They were like it doesn't count. And I was like, "What do you mean?" And they were like, "If you just sit there, it doesn't count." And then my husband's friend was like, "But if you got a good friend, they'll shake the bed for you."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Stop."
Yeah.
Or jump on the bed.
Yeah.
So
And I
there's
was
like some
like,
friction.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh my goodness."
hmm hmm
Nothing like the
Good
Mormons.
times.
I mean, the things people will do to like justify having sex
Yeah.
when they think they're
They
not
will
supposed to.
find ways around any rule.
Yes, they will.
hmm
Well, back to some
Okay, thank
sad
you.
stories. Thank
Oh,
you, Randy. I did love
Yes.
your story. I learned so much. I had no idea. I'm
it was
shook.
fun. It was fun doing some of the research for this. Some of it I knew, some of it I didn't. I
I
don't
can
know
only
why I didn't
imagine.
assume that premarital rate was as high as it was because I did know about bundling.
That makes sense though, because then it's like, oh, we're already pregnant. Well, they just
Yeah.
happen to be born a little month early, a
Yeah.
month or 2 months early, just around the
I
time we
mean,
started bundling.
I don't know why I assumed that they would have decency and wouldn't do things in front of their parents.
Can I tell a funnier sex story before we go on to heavier stuff?
Yes, of
Yes,
course.
Greg, why would
Always
people
So,
want
random.
the sex
yeah.
story?
So, so one of the like when I was in grad school, one of the things that I read that was really surprising to me in terms of thinking about like how people, really throughout history are just into weird and wild and interesting sex stuff is I had a professor who wanted me to read The Decameron by Boccaccio. Have any of y'all read any of that? Like sometimes they have you read it in high school, apparently, but my high school didn't have me read it. And so I'd never read it, but the whole idea
Didn't they
is
make that
that
into a show?
maybe, oh yeah, there's been
I
some
was like, I
shows
swear I
similar.
saw
Yeah,
this.
so like the
Okay, keep going.
premise is that like, it's he wrote it in the 1300s during the plague. So the premise is that people go to like there's these rich nobles who like the
hmm
plague's broken out in their town, so they go escape to the mountains and they have to wait 10 days until the plague runs its course. So they're all telling stories and amusing themselves and like historians think it's interesting because they know he copied some stories from other sources when he wrote it. He repeated some from like Arabic sources, like the Thousand and One Nights, and then and kind of took his spin on that. And then there's others that we think are like original, right? We know there's no other example, so like maybe these are his original stories. But there's one that I read that I thought it was the wildest thing. It's my favorite story in the Decameron, where there's this couple that the someone cheats on someone, right? Like the husband goes and sleeps with the wife of somebody in the village. And and these stories are supposed to be funny typically. And then so the other partner finds out what happened and then they trick their partner into getting locked into a chest. But they also have talked to the partner of the other, so it's like the jilted party, right? Like like the guy cheated on his wife and he's locked in the chest, and his wife went to the other husband who also got cheated on and was like, "Hey, we should get these people back." So they have sex like on top of the chest while the other person is locked in there and has to hear them like going at it. And in the end, they realize like the moral of the story is that like, hey, they all enjoy fucking each other. So then they just become a poly like square basically. Um, and this is from the 1300s.
All I'm saying is there's different ways of loving each other, even throughout the centuries. That's wild, Greg. What kind of story is that?
But I love that like the moral of the story is just like we should all just sleep with each other.
I love that story, but also that would suck to be the guy in the trunk. Not because like you
Would
don't hear it,
it?
but it depends on how you're okay, if you
But
have like
apparently he's turned
claustrophobia
on.
issues. Oh well,
He's turned on too,
Yeah,
right?
I
Like
was
he
like,
gets
he's
off on it, and then
enjoying
it's
it.
like,
Randy's
oh
like, that
hey,
sounds like a
maybe the
good
solution is that we all fuck each other, you know?
that
No,
could
I
be
don't
the
want to be in
solution.
a confined space. I'm just saying,
That's the part
I
I
get
don't
it.
like.
There's
It makes me
people who have
anxious.
like cages and stuff, you know? It
Yeah.
makes,
Oh, go
Have
ahead,
y'all seen
Greg.
How to Build a Sex Room on
yeah,
Netflix?
of
I haven't
course,
watched
of
So
it.
good.
course.
It made me
It is
anxious.
actually so good, Karina. It is so
Should
good.
I? I
I
started
love it.
watching, no, y'all, on Amazon
I
Prime.
wish
There's this
they had a
show.
second season,
Me
truthfully. It was
too.
Okay,
so
then
good.
now I have to
Yeah.
watch it. Now I
I
have to
tried
watch it.
watching Good Sex on HBO, and it's not as good. It actually like makes me mad half the time.
Oh no.
I don't know that I've seen it. I've seen almost all of them, like the Sex, Love, and Goop episodes too.
I
Those were
haven't.
There's a
also very interesting. I was like, wow, and Gwyneth Paltrow is learning alongside us. Okay.
well, now I kind of want to watch them. There's
I honestly I don't love Goop for
no, I
everything that
don't
he
either.
stands for, but those documentaries I did actually enjoy. I
Oh
do
no,
recommend
I
them for
definitely
you
will have to
specifically,
watch them.
Karina.
You. No,
You.
I've been watching this show. It's called A Very British Brothel. And it's it's this little British lady, and she opens up a brothel with her daughter. And they do not have sex with people, but like they basically have a place because prostitution is legal there. So like where the ladies can work and they can take care of them and they keep them safe and they can do their work. And it's really fascinating to watch because one, it is super British. They always have tea. There's always tea. But it's a really
Tea in
good
a
show.
brothel just is a step too
And
far for
they're
me.
like, people
But
come by
okay.
for Christmas and just hang out. And I'm like, the fuck? But it's not for me to know that life, unfortunately. No, it's fine. I'm
I'm
okay with it.
assuming you've seen the one on Hulu.
Which one?
Harlots? No,
Oh
this
yeah, I
wasn't
love
it.
Harlots. And then I think they just like ended it and there was no ending of the season. It was depressing.
Oh, it's canceled?
I think it was.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay, well, never mind.
Now I'm sad. Yeah. Anyway, I've drank one alcohol and I made Evan give me another. So now we have to go on this journey together. We're going back to Roanoke, everybody, to the island. So during the first part of this story, we covered what drove England to colonize the New World, as well as the initial explorations for establishing a permanent colony. Explorations, that's the word. There was the first attempt at Roanoke that ended up in a fractured relationships with the indigenous people, as well as starvation and death for most of the settlers. Sad. We had met with the people of the second expedition, and they had settled on the island of Roanoke. The second attempt was going as well as the first, and John White reluctantly left to get more supplies and funds to support the colony. So when we left, he just like wandered off. So poor John White leaves his family and his friends to go find resources back in England. Unfortunately for him, his timing was terrible because King Philip of Spain was tired of Protestant England and decided to fight with the English. The issue was that the English kept like attacking Spanish ships and taking their shit, and Spain was like, no, we don't want that anymore. Please stop touching our stuff. So they fought with him. So by the time John White comes back and he's like, hey, I need help for like my family and friends that we've abandoned across the ocean, England doesn't care. They're fighting their own issues because King Philip had assembled a fleet of 130 ships to attack England and secure Spanish dominance. England was very busy. So John White was just continuously like bouncing around, asking for help, and nobody cared. Eventually, he was able to accompany Grenville with two small vessels, but then the ships were looted on their way south and nearly all of the supplies was lost. So he had to just go back to England and wait again for another opportunity to make it back to the New World. The financial strain of the war meant that England wasn't looking to spend more money on colonization, but politically, Sir Walter Raleigh was also fighting against Sir Francis Drake, who had undermined him and his need of colonization. So Walter Raleigh is showing up and he's like, my people, we need to go and explore because this is my job. And Sir Francis Drake is like, no, we're not going to make that much money. It's not worth the expenditure of us colonizing. So they're just basically on the opposite sides. And he's like fighting against him. And Walter's trying to like support this expenditure while the country's already drowning. It's like it's hard for him to get more support when the financiers aren't able to see their investment. I mean, as a finance bro, which Randy and I are now, um, we talked about it this week. We've decided if I'm not making the money, I'm not seeing the gains. Why am I here? You know, I get it. I get it.
Somebody's got to support me.
Exactly.
Okay.
You think this is free? But it was over a year. So at this point, it's been over a year since John White returned to England. So he just left and he's like hoping for the best. And I don't know how the people were supposed to buy. Okay. So by the time he left, it was like 2 months after they got there that they were like, we're not going to make it. We've eaten everything. How were they supposed to survive the year later when he still hasn't made it back? I don't understand. Eventually, it was like 3 years before he made it back to Roanoke. And I'm just like, where's the surprise when the people go missing? Because you've
I
been
don't
gone
think
for years.
so. I will say this. In my research, I stumbled onto something that I wanted to ask you about because it said that that was not surprising. They did not care at all that the colonists were 100% expendable in a lot of ways, and that he just
Well, and what we talked about in like a lot of our earlier episodes was how expendable people's lives were to this sacrifice of colonization. Because people are worthless when it comes to the power and the money and the resources to be gained. So people's lives are just a casualty of financing. I mean, honestly, we could justify anything like that. What is colonization? What is manifest destiny? But going and gaining what is mine, what is worth mine. And the lives that I
oh
have
god,
to kill to get there is
don't even get me started on manifest
but,
destiny.
but
Mm-mm.
exactly, but it's like
No,
what I
yeah,
mean is like that's what it is. These people are expendable. We are not send Walter's not allowed to go because he's too valuable to the queen. So you know what I mean? Like, I don't
So,
care about these poor people.
this
You're
is like a
sending your
little out of context, but also relevant. There's this really interesting book on like Southern slaveholding culture, so like way later in like the mid 1800s. But one of the things that this author does is look at how he argues in this one chapter that Southerners, like Southern plantation owners, saw slave enslaved people as extensions of themselves. And so like he was looking at like in diaries and stuff how people talked about hunting and how they would often be like there's these slippages, right? Where they're often talking they're like, "Oh, I shot this deer and I like tracked it or whatever." But it's often like an enslaved person who's carrying a gun and hunting with them because there's like these moments where they actually reveal that it's that person that shot it, but it's like they own them, their property, they're just doing this thing for me. And so whatever they do is really what I did, which is wild. It's like it was a very interesting chapter to me to think about how like people can see others as extensions of themselves. So like for elites with like when you think about class, like elite people like Raleigh and like in the upper class in London could just send these people out and often kind of probably see them that way, where they're just sort of doing things for them and therefore it's like a part of them. And so you really like if you see them as like objects in that way, like it really doesn't matter what happens to them.
That's literally it. It's just my Legos that I'm sending out. And if some of them get crushed
Yeah.
on the way out, what's the harm? What's the, it's just
Yeah.
That is
I got
terrifying. The
I got another
psychological
30 poor
implications
people.
of that, though, are actually terrifying.
That's what we built this country on. That is
Yeah.
the belief. That is why we're here. hmm Isn't that crazy? And it's crazy because like the more you read, the more you see how it like it is ingrained in every single thing that this country stands for and everything we've done. It's how we've justified like all the atrocities that we've performed on other people.
Karina, I'm gonna need you to stop saying we.
Because because as much as we want to pretend that it is not us, our ancestors did commit atrocities. I can't pretend I'm not half Spanish. I can't pretend I'm not European in some percentage.
God, can't we?
We
They
can't.
pretend like we're not. If they are allowed to pretend like we don't have any of their heritage in us, I think we're allowed to disown them. I'm
I
just
feel like
saying.
I agree with what you're saying, but I still have to come to terms with the things that my ancestors have done.
That's fair.
I think that's like how I'm seeing it. Not necessarily like I'm taking ownership. I did this because that's not something I would ever do. And I feel very strongly about colonization. But um, somebody in me did do that. Somebody part of me did that. And I have to come to terms with that. And I have to deal with that. Unfortunately, I'm going through a very like very self-learning shadow work time. So I'm very sorry.
Yeah, I was like, I do not identify with that at all. But you go on your journey, Karina.
I
Happy for
will.
you.
Me and the plants will continue on. Okay, I will go on. But that makes sense. If they're looking at us, if they're looking at the people they're sending out there as objects, as just extensions of themselves, as a tool to be used to meet an end, I don't care. I don't need to give you more money. You had what you had. You knew what you were doing. But it's also sad because John White literally just left his family, his kids, his grandkids. Like he had a life there. Okay, so the colony had not communicated with England, right? So they hadn't received word back from them at all. It's also an initial colony in a place that has not been colonized before, so there's not any traffic going in and out of the area. And also, John White took their only boat. So how else were they supposed to communicate? It's like somebody took your phone and they're like, "Make sure to text me later," or whatever. Like, what is wrong with you? John White wrote in his journal how heavy with guilt he was, and how, regardless of the needs of the colony, the needs of England herself were greater. So even John White was like, well, we must think of what's best for her, England. So poor John White finally makes it on a ship and sets sail towards Roanoke. And instead of like making an actual effort, right? Like to get back to these people that need help, they spend a lot of their time raiding Spanish ships. So it took them a while, but eventually they did get there by late summer. And in August 1590, they landed on the northern end of Roanoke. And John Wright wrote in his journal of the anticipation he felt because he was finally excited to see his family. It's been at least 3 years since he's seen them. So he was cautiously optimistic. And when they landed on the island, they saw like smoke when they were around the area of like the other side of the island. So they thought, oh, that's the settlement camp. We'll see them tomorrow. They didn't really think anything of it. But when they got to the camp, they found no sign of human life. And although the town wasn't destroyed, they found signs that the buildings were carefully taken apart, as if they had planned their departure. Like it wasn't like a rush thing, like they had taken the time to really organize how they took apart these buildings. So that sign was reassuring. Maybe they left to somewhere that was more suited for survival. They searched for clues of where they went or when, and they only discovered two words carved in capital letters on a large wooden post, Croatoan, and just Crow. John White fully believed that the message was left for him and felt reassured that his family had willingly relocated and had not been victims of violence. He assumed that the settlers had just relocated to Croatoan Island, where the local tribe was friendly with the settlers. Like, we know those guys. We'll just go over there. They found no human remains and the boats were gone. Like, there was nothing there that showed like there was people there. He wanted to explore more, but was unable to make it to Croatoan Island due to a storm. He had to return to England before they were able to search again for the settlers. So they really just searched that
Wait,
island. What?
it was easier to go all the way back to
To
England.
England? I never thought about it till now, Randy, but yes, it was. Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure I got that correctly. Okay, thank you.
So they checked the one island, did not go further to the other island to
They're
check.
like, well, that's good enough. And then
Yeah.
You know how they
I
wrote
waited
they were on
3
the other
years.
island?
What's
Fuck
another
that shit.
3 years? Very much the Odyssey, but okay.
There's a lot of parts of these stories that I'm like, the fact the world that it is today is stressful and it has been really heavy on my shoulders. That being said, the fact that we even made it to this far, the fact that we even made it to anything, the fact that colonization even landed in anything that wasn't just everybody dying after like the third attempt is really inspiring. Like, that's crazy. I'm amazed.
Yeah,
I Okay, so yes, everything is gone. So John White just goes back to England instead of braving the storm, without answers about the fate of the colony or his family. But everyone has their theories. Mwahaha. That's why we did haunted October. Roanoke. Everyone watched that one thing. What was it? That scary show.
American Horror Story. American Horror Story.
I didn't love their version of it, honestly. And as I've done research, I love it even less, but I kind of want to rewatch it to see how historically accurate it was.
You know what? The spookier the better.
Mm-hmm. It is
If
that
they're gonna
time.
disappear, let's at least have fun with it.
So John White returns to England without settlers and no answers. So everyone in the court was talking about it. From court officials to investors, they all had their theories. Naturally, the first idea was that the indigenous savages killed them off because that is what we automatically think about people we don't know. They just moved somewhere else. That's the other theory. But they didn't really do anything about it. They talked about it amongst themselves in the same way that you talk about a car crash as you drive past it, but you don't do anything about it. You know what I mean? It wasn't a big deal, and there was just little public mourning. You're like, that's just part of the day. They're gone. The most plausible theory was that the colonists moved to Croatoan Island, about 50 miles away. Or they even moved back to that originally planned location in the Chesapeake Bay area. Chesapeake Bay had more fertile land and had more shelter from the harsh weather. Most of the English people, with their distrust of the natives in the New World, believed that the Secatoan tribe had taken revenge on the settlement because they had burned them down, their settlement down, or their village down, which is a valid, I could see that. This guy left, burned a village. I'm not surprised everybody died. They didn't believe that John White didn't find anything or that the buildings were dismantled. They were like, he just made that up. They just assumed everything was destroyed by the surrounding villagers and they just killed them. And because no one could prove that the settlers were actually dead, though, Raleigh was able to keep his claim on Virginia until one of the sons of a settler needed to have his father pronounced dead because he had to inherit something or, an estate. The son filed his petition in 1594 and it was granted in 1597 because things take forever. Raleigh continued to assert his authority over Virginia even though the original patent expired in 1591. Raleigh just does what he wants. It's fine. In 1595, he decided to take a trip to, quote, find the lost colonist. But really, his goal was to find the El Dorado of North America. So Raleigh is like, we got to go find these guys, but he's just using the money and the endeavors to go
I
look for
was
gold.
really, really hoping that that wasn't true.
Yeah, you wanted him to
When
be a
I
good
read that, I
person.
was like, wow.
He's not great. He's not
No.
great. And it's terrible because he's cute. It's always the cute ones. If you can get a portrait of yourself to look hot, that's amazing. I'm
Karina,
still
I
in love
don't know
with
what
him.
it is with you with that stiff pop collar, but
It gets me. I don't know. I If you go to my house and there's a photo of Walter Raleigh on my wall, it's the one from the post, yeah. I do kind of want it now. Damn it, Randy. Anyway, Just have it in my office. So they did reach the area, but they didn't get off the boat because the weather was bad. So they drove by, guys. It was fine. In 1602, Raleigh returned again in search of the colonists, but he also went when sassafras was super, super expensive. And guess where there was a ton of like sassafras that nobody had? So he went out and searched, quote unquote, for the colonists while also harvesting sassafras so he could come back and sell it in England. But the weather was bad again, so they couldn't reach the island or explore it. Raleigh was implicated in a plot to overthrow King James and was imprisoned in 1603. Then he died in 1618. But John White never gave up hope that his family was alive. I honestly feel like I would go back. If my family had just all died over there, I just would search for them forever. I don't know. But maybe I'm hopeful. We don't know till we're all colonists coming back and then leaving and then finding that your village is gone. So you're
That
in that
doesn't sound
situation.
hopeful. That sounds unrealistic, but
I I just wouldn't want to live with I think if my whole family was gone and they were just over there on an island and we didn't know if they died or not and I didn't find any sign of them, I would fight. I would look for them. I would just what am I going to do in England? My family's here somewhere.
you
But
think.
I also am like, I don't know, I miss my mom a lot. So maybe that's it.
Well, I think it's crazy, like how you said that they like took everything down. Sorry, I'm eating. That's why I'm off camera. I didn't want
No,
you
yeah,
all had
that's
to
the
see that.
weird part.
But it's like the fact that it was like carefully done, like you said, like it wasn't like, oh, things just went up in flames and everyone just left, or it was a
See, that would be
massacre.
more understandable if
It was
everything was
almost
like
too
destroyed.
clean. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And they wrote the name of the island now. That's the part that I'm like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there's only one Croatoan I know, and it's over there. At least I would go explore the island, the other island, at least once. I know it took him 3 years to get there, but like at least explore the island, maybe check, make sure they weren't over there. Hope there's good weather. There's
I
no,
mean, yes, at least check the island
but like
while you're
not, I'm
there
not gonna go
before
check
you go
the whole
back to
thing.
England.
Yes, we're just gonna check all of America. They're about, they're gonna be here somewhere. We'll find
I
them.
just question the dedication if he couldn't make it 50 miles. You know, that's just
I
me.
no,
Yeah.
I don't think he has it in him, honestly, Randy. So one of the most popular theories about what happened to the colonists is that they integrated with the local villages of the area. The settlers heavily relied on alliances and relationships with the indigenous people for survival, and later explorers were told of people with European features living near Roanoke and Croatoan Islands. They described not only European-looking people, but European-looking tools and fabrics. These reports are not the most reliable because they are often secondhand, but even colonists from Jamestown reported accounts of light-skinned individuals in native village with European tools and mannerisms. The Powhatan chief even told John Smith of a place with walled houses and European clothing. They even created a map where all of the potential European settlements were, according to these reports, and sent search parties to find Sir Walter Raleigh's lost company, but found nothing. Although many people believe in the theory that the colonists of Roanoke moved in with the surrounding villages, there's not a lot of evidence that supports that possibility. But it does exist when conversations were interpreted with the hope that the settlers had survived. I think that that's the thing is that a lot of the people that were looking for them were hoping that they didn't just all die of starvation and that was it. They were hoping that they were surviving, and that's the most plausible way to make it. The story that was sold was one that's supported by those with something to gain, either financially or politically, from exploring the New World. So typically the ones that were like, no, they're totally alive, were people that needed them to be alive. By 1672, most of the traffic in the surrounding areas of Roanoke Island diminished, and it would be about 20 years before the Jamestown settlement was established in Virginia. So not a lot of people were going to go in that area for a long time. So what did happen? What are the theories? What do we know? Most believable theories during the 1600s surrounded the idea that the natives, with their quote, violent nature, would seek out revenge on any colonists they came across. But honestly, yeah, I would also seek out revenge if you burn down my village. I wouldn't be happy if I saw you again. The colonists were left to the mercy of the local resources and required help from the surrounding people. When they had arrived, any crops they did have did not have enough time to become a reliable food source because they got there like the end of the summer. They didn't know the land and were unprepared for the environment. They could forage, fish, or hunt, but the coast was not a sustainable source of food for a colony of 100 over an extended period of time. The forest was dense, and it was hard to clear enough land to grow enough food for all the colonists. The region was also hot, humid, and subtropic, which was an extreme shift from the climate of England, which is just very little, is what I'm understanding. It's just like rainy, foggy, chill. It snows sometimes. But if you go from that to the tropics, it's going to be a real hard time to survive.
So, just to comment on your Native American
Oh, yes.
comment earlier, I just want to say also, though, that there were also tribes who saw the Europeans as nuisances and honestly, they just thought that leaving them to their own devices was going to be enough to have them exterminate themselves. I mean, I told you last episode, like it's unbelievable to me the resources that they did not know how to utilize. They
Oh,
were
no, we're
really
going
just
to go through
ill-equipped.
like a little more, but it is, I'm telling you, it's amazing anything happened. Like,
Hmm.
genuinely, I am shocked. Like, every time I learn more, I'm like, how did anybody live?
Yeah, I'm just saying that because in the future, when we talk about this more, I will challenge that because that is a really big belief system that led to a lot of the fallout with Native American tribes in general, right? They were weaponizing that depiction of natives to start
Right, which,
things. Yeah.
right,
So,
exactly. But then
yeah.
they started it forever ago for financial gain to like, because that's, I mean, that's how they thought about people they don't know. I think it makes sense. Like, we are wary of people we're unfamiliar with to keep ourselves safe, but I think that
I think
colonization
that's
took it to a
how
new level.
Europeans thought of people they didn't know. Savages who were,
Exactly. Well,
yeah,
because they had to think of them that way in order to support the colonization because we couldn't colonize a Christian nation,
right.
but
Yeah.
you could colonize barbarians,
But it's
savages.
interesting because, like, even within European culture, I mean, I think it really is this idea of ethnocentrism, where it's like my culture is the right way to do it and everything else is wrong. Because I think I was listening to one of y'all's earlier episodes and talking about like colonization and sort of like the audacity to claim, like, this is my land and like native people aren't using it right and stuff like that. And there's a really good book by a historian named Patricia Seed called Ceremonies of Possession that looks at how, like, the Spanish, the French, the English, the Dutch, the Portuguese all approached claiming the land in different ways and oftentimes
Hmm.
didn't recognize how other Europeans claimed it. Because for the English, there's this whole like turf and twig ceremony. That's like going back to English peasant culture and the idea that you have to give a piece of the land and like the woods to somebody. And so English sources often try to like show that they did this. And so like the natives transferred the land to them. But the Spanish are like, that's not how you claim the land. It works a different way. So like even within European cultures, they're all like jockeying for like the top position and they put everybody else below them. You know, it's like the English and the Irish and how they saw them as savage people,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
trying to conquer Ireland and throughout like the entire 1600s.
That's freaking wild. I love how even amongst like all of the colonizing nations, they're still like, but the way you do it, that's wrong.
Well, and
Uh,
that's what we talk about when it comes to caste, right? Like
Hmm.
when we were talking about that throughout American history, they needed to define the degrees of whiteness in order to establish that pecking order. So, Italians and Irish were often just as bad as being brown or black.
Right, until we got a little more like
Until we were going to
integrated.
be,
Yeah.
well, until they were going to be the minority instead of the majority. And then it's like, oh, we
Oh, we
need
need more
more
white
people.
people. We need more
It's
white
the
people.
same reason I think, well, this is an aside, but in my previous job, I argued all the time about how irritating it was that there was such a divide in the Hispanic. I already hate the race selection anyway. It's already so bad, right? It's already so bad. But the
The
fact that
options are terrible.
you can't be Hispanic and also racist is wild to me. And I think that the reason why they keep it separated as an ethnicity is that if people choose Hispanic and they're nothing else, they most often choose white, and it bumps up their numbers. And I'm going to stop there, but that I can rant for a long time about that specific topic
I have a
because
lot of feelings about, yeah.
I really think it's about the need to stay in the majority
Oh, I think
and
that's
having
why
to force people
99%
to
of,
identify.
yeah, that's why a lot of the stuff that's happening right now is happening because guess who has been in the majority or has been leading their way to the majority for a very long time. And
Hmm.
and that's scary for some people. It's the white people. It is
I
anyway.
think we knew the people.
Well, just in case you didn't know, but that's the thing is like, and then the more assimilated Hispanic people are like racist too, or like people. One of my friends, her parents are both illegally here, and she voted for Trump, and I'm like, not she's not my friend, she's my sister's friend. Let me clarify. But like, and I was like, girl, what are you doing? And
Well, I feel the same way about LGBTQ plus
yes, and
voting
you're
for
voting for
Trump.
like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why would you ever vote against your rights? It will never make sense to me.
Well, it's a wild world, and I don't like to think how other people think because I can only know one
It's
way.
that's the dangers of being a one issue voter, because I guarantee it's probably based on a lot of, one issue.
Well, I feel like life is so nuanced. It's hard to look at things one issue. I know that like our options are limited, but still, like, anyway. And especially if that issue is controlling what other people are doing. So the region is very different from England, and flooding and damage from the storms and hurricanes added to the harsh conditions that the settlers had to deal with on the island. Tree ring studies done in modern times show that during the 1580s, the area was experiencing one of the worst droughts that area had seen in the past 800 years. So they picked the worst time to go. The diseases that they brought, which took out many of the indigenous populations, also affected the colonists. I think that's the part we forget. I did not realize how much like these illnesses didn't just affect all of the indigenous populations they killed, but killed a lot of the colonists as well. Like that, I don't know why that was shocking, but we never hear about how much they suffered. Many accounts of the time emphasize how unsanitary the conditions of the colony truly were. They also improperly stored their food, which led to a lot of diseases spreading, such as typhoid and influenza. Food wasn't the only area where the colonists lacked preparation. They also didn't have clothes that would protect them from these new environments and the harsh winters. Their shelters were not up to the task of properly protecting the people of the colony, and the close quarters combined with already fragile people who were starving and probably already had some illness created the perfect environment for respiratory illnesses such as pneumonia.
Can
It's
I,
not a good
can
time.
I, I'm just gonna say this is hilarious to me, mostly because it is not like England is new to colonizing. Okay. It's not like these people are like new to the idea of fighting and taking over land and travel, right? So I just they did they want to succeed is my question, I guess. Were they planning to do a really good job?
I don't know. And the fact is, like, they had just rescued people from the island recently, and they were like, hey, we can't make it here. I don't understand why nobody at any point was like, what did we do? What could we do better? There's options. Like, there was no communication and there was no planning. I don't know. I wasn't there. I can't say. Maybe they were busy on, Spanish stuff that they were just like, just send some people over and see if they can make it. Because it kind of feels like what they did. They were just like, just throw some guys at it.
Hmm.
Greg, do you know? What did they do?
Well, so I have a comment about disease actually that I think is really
Mm.
interesting. Because you were like, oh, like they didn't realize that this affected them,
I
you know?
I genuinely didn't because I always hear about
Right.
how it
Well,
was
so you know what?
terrible.
So this is, I feel like one of those things that we assume that like oftentimes like the way the story is framed about colonization and everything is that like Europeans had much better technology. They were like more knowledgeable than indigenous people who were just like, they just didn't understand how the world actually works. But like when you think about with disease, what did Europeans believe, right? They believed essentially in like ancient Greco-Roman medicine and the idea of the humors, that you have four humors, you have blood, you have phlegm, you have yellow bile and black bile, and those are associated with different things like hot, cold, wet, dry. And so, like, that's why you have bloodletting, right? Is the idea is that you have too much like hot and wet humors, and so you need to reduce that by bloodletting, right? Like you bleed
I'm too
people.
hot and wet. I need the blood to go.
Right. Well, but so if you're sick to your stomach and stuff, it's like, oh, well, it's like this kind of thing. So we have to give you some herbs that'll make you emetics that will make you like shit yourself and throw up, right? Is that you have to purge the bile, right, from your system. And so like that's how Europeans viewed the world. It was not like the modern day like germ theory where, we understand that there's microbes and all this kind of stuff, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
there's a really good book I read by this guy named Paul Kelton that looks at Cherokee medicinal practices and how, like, a lot of things that the Cherokee did would actually work based on like modern understanding of like smallpox and how it
Hmm.
induces fever and all of this stuff. So you have practices like sequestering people when they're ill because like there's a spiritual reason for that, that you have to like separate people, but you also have different practices like cold water plunges and different things that would mitigate the fever and actually like quarantine people. So he kind of argues that it's not until like late in colonization, like the 1750s and 60s, where the Cherokee are really facing encroachment into their lands in Virginia and the Carolinas, that they actually have like a massive disease outbreak. So all the other contact points that we have with the Cherokee, they don't show any signs of being decimated by disease. So in many ways, like indigenous medicinal
Hmm.
practices are actually better than European understandings. Like they may not have our modern understanding of like germs and like where smallpox comes from as a virus, but the things that they did were actually more effective than Europeans.
That's fascinating, Greg. And you know what? Not surprising. Not at all. Well, and you know what? Who told us those stories? Because you're right. All I've heard about colonization is like we were showing up to tell them how great we were doing. And the more I read, the more I realize that was not the case. It wasn't going well.
Well, and I think that that's so funny because growing up, I got the story of we're clean and they were dirty because I am Cherokee. And that is how my family, they were like, we were clean before they got here and they made everything dirty.
They
I'm not
feel
joking. That's
filthy.
literally
That's
my
so
grandpa
interesting.
would tell me stuff like that. So,
And it makes
yeah.
sense though. It like truly they did show up and now everything is filthy. So I get it.
Hmm.
I
That's
think it
wild.
was pretty common to bathe like once a month as a European. Like that's a figure I've heard thrown out there,
Oh
which
yeah,
is
it was.
which is wild.
Hmm.
I think in our toilet paper or before the poop story or whatever history is like the history of what people cleaned and they were like, no, you shouldn't be doing that. Most of the time,
Well,
you shouldn't be doing that.
they would put feces in the water and in the flowing water. I mean, they would do all kinds of things that would irk the natives around them to no end. I am telling you, they they were bothersome.
I
I
mean, the
had a
fact that that's how you
professor.
were. Oh, go ahead, Greg.
No, no, no. I had a professor who I remember him talking about. the idea of just like how dirty people were and the way he described it. And I don't know if this is like anecdotal or like some story he had heard that he was passing on that or that something he'd read that Europeans believed that like a good stink would keep the demons away. So like you gotta be a little stanky to make sure the demons don't want to come mess with you.
They were so superstitious, though. I kind of feel like that would be true.
So I don't know if that's like true or not. I can't like pinpoint that to a specific source, but I want it to be true.
I don't know if it's true, but it feels right. So I'm taking it. I'm taking it as fact, Greg. Thank you. They
Exactly.
believed that you
Yes.
had to let out your hot bile so that you could survive. They also believed that the uterus could move around the body for a really long time, so I'm not surprised. So if all of the biological and environment issues were not enough, they also had drama amongst the colonists because people cannot live together without having some drama. In addition to the drama they already had with the people living outside the colonies. The leadership skills were poor, and they didn't manage their resources well. People would accuse others of hoarding, and then they would rebel against their leaders because they were desperate and starving. So they often like led to terrible choices such as thieving, hoarding, violence. But also, if I'm hungry, I will fight you. They often clashed on what job should be done, and most of the men were tasked with reinforcing the defenses of the fort, which they didn't want to do because they wanted to be out resourcing for survival resources, like searching around, which makes sense. If I'm hungry, I want to go find the food. I don't necessarily want to reinforce a fort because if I'm dead, the fort means nothing to me. The reports of that the colony was purposefully dismantled give support to the idea that they were most likely just trying to relocate. There were some areas of the fort with additional reinforcement, which suggests that they may have needed extra protection from the weather or attackers. But there were no skeletal remains or signs of mass casualties, further darkening the mystery of what happened to the colonists. So, in modern times, there has been some exploration of the area with in 1887 Talcott Williams discovers a native burial site. And then he just goes back in 1895 and they found nothing. In the 1990s, Ivor Noel Hume investigated the island and found nothing that could be positively linked to the 1587 colony. They did find like a few things, but they also couldn't tell if it was between 1585 or 1587 colony, and they were like, it could be anybody. In 1993, Hurricane Emily destroyed the island, exposing many native artifacts, and inspired David Sutton Phelps Jr. in 1995 to explore Roanoke, where he discovered a ring that he claimed belongs to the family of the 1587 colony, but then was tested and found that it was too new of a ring. So there's like a few urban legends and some weird little stories that have come out from this, and also in the exploration and like things that have come out about the colonists. So in 1937, Lewis Hammond found a stone with some writing on it that was in Elizabethan England claimed to be written by Eleanor Dare, John White's daughter. And it told of the deaths of her family and all the colonists due to an attack by the indigenous people. Hammond's story could never be verified, because it also happened during the Depression era. So this guy comes out with a story and he's like, someone wrote on this rock, and the rock says that they belong to the Roanoke colonists. And after he finds the rock, more people keep finding more stones, and the story just keeps going. So it's like, we were attacked, and then this happened, and then this happened, and this happened, and then she died. And most historians dismiss most of the Dare stones, is what they're called because they were by Eleanor Dare. Most of them are considered fake because they went all the way down to Georgia. And it's like, okay, she probably did not go all the way down to Georgia and write on all of these stones and just abandon them. That doesn't make any sense. But the original stone was never like falsified, but it was never like verified. And I don't know how one would verify a stone carving. I'm not an expert.
I can comment on that a little bit.
Yes,
You know,
please
it's like
enlighten us.
with archaeology, you want to have a record of like basically from like when it was pulled out of the ground and like a chain of custody. And if you don't have that, you can't verify that. And so it's it's pretty common for things that can't be verified to not have a good chain of custody. And it's weird because like forgeries are super common. So I actually read this book on how the Green family, which owns Hobby Lobby, um, has funded, they've basically bought up a ton of antiquities from the Middle East that you can't verify where these things came from. And they're the ones who funded the Museum of the Bible in Washington,
Oh,
D.C. And so like they have a motive to sort of like have these amazing discoveries that prove Christianity and stuff like that, but have been really like opaque with like where these things come from, and like some of them were bought illegally. There's this whole idea that they were like breaking apart these mummy masks, like tomb masks from in Egypt that had scraps that were early examples of the New Testament and stuff. So it might be like the Gospel of Mark or Luke or something like that, way earlier than any other things that we've claimed. But there's like it basically looks like fraud, you know?
well, it feels like they have a goal
Oh,
and
100%.
they're posting their things. Yeah.
Yeah, but like forgeries are super common like throughout history, you know. So like the Dare stones I think kind of fit with that. Where like it's conspicuous for like no one knows where these come from, but then they tell this story all the way down to this point, you know.
It's a wild, and I'm like, we're just some guy, right? Now she died. How do we know she died? She wrote it after the great. How do
Yeah.
we know?
She's like I'm dying right now because of this, you know.
But I'm writing it on the stone
Yeah,
as I
exactly.
go.
Right.
Well, and then that was the thing is a lot of people were like, did Eleanor Dare even know how to write or read or inscribe on? Like, I think she knew, she theoretically like could know how to inscribe on stones, but she'd have to know how to write and read. Was she doing
Yeah.
that when she was going to go be a colonist? Like, I don't know.
What's
There's a
like the
lot of,
tradition that Moses wrote the Pentateuch, like the first five books of the Bible. It's like Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and then like Moses dies in, you know, in Exodus, and then it keeps going. So it's like, how did Moses write all of this? You know?
was he there?
Yeah,
Did he
he
write
wrote it, but he
before?
died, and then he wrote about dying.
I have heard that defended with it was the knowledge that he obtained when he went to collect the it's the
Yeah,
same thing
yeah.
with people fighting about like what's the original 10 commandments versus the 10 commandments that you got the second time he came down from the
Oh
mountain.
yeah, broke the stones or whatever.
Yeah,
Now there's two.
exactly. He there's a lot of lore around that man.
Side note, my son is 7, okay? So he's in second grade right now.
Yeah.
And obviously I know that they're not gonna put all this, all this stuff in there, but it's like real crazy how such a smaller scale that they're taught, if that makes sense. Like like he was going through his slides and he was doing social studies, and it was like just the smallest tidbit on Sacagawea and Lewis and Clark, and that was it.
Oh yeah.
And like, I mean, it was literally like a couple of slides, and it was basically like, um it said, oh, the Europeans were immigrants, and the Lewis and Clark came because they were trying to find trade routes, I think is how they put it. And they were like basically saying like she helped them and stuff, right? Because
Yeah, yeah.
they want to have a obviously a positive spin on history for younger children.
Mhm.
But it was like really crazy because like it's just like I'm talking about, it was like 5 bullet points,
Mhm.
and it was just like, you know what I mean? Like which I know that he's small, but like it's just crazy because like, even for me, I'm like, I feel like I retained that information more than I
Mhm.
retained anything from like beyond, as far as like junior high, high school, like, but like you still don't learn the depths like that, I guess, like
Yeah.
unless you
Well,
research.
when you think about the like history stories, right? They're the
Yeah.
stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves. Like that's what I tell my students on like the first day of class, you know. And I think that like we remember stories, right? Like I remember story like, you know, the stories that I've told about something that's happened to me or that my friends have told me, you know, way more
Hmm.
than specifics in other areas. No one remembers how the English language works in terms of like verbs and parts of speech and stuff, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Since we're talking about that, like she helped, like they came here for this. She helped them, like
Yeah.
saved their tools and their
See,
writing or something. Like it was just very like cut and dry um
Yeah.
information, I
that
guess that's
irritates me so bad though, because that's like the classic, you know, the Native Americans are the foil for the white people. They're
yeah,
there to be the little helpmate.
that's literally it
Well,
was like
and
they
that
taught
Nobody's
them
gonna
and
how
talk
to,
about what a
yeah.
badass Sacagawea was for carrying a fucking baby on her back while
and taking
showing
these
these
white
two white
guys.
men,
Right.
yeah, across the continent.
Well, even in the story of Roanoke, they talk about how like they depended so much on these interpreters, indigenous interpreters, and how they when the second colonies showed up, like the second time they tried, they were like, "Oh, we helped them and we'll." They were on their side. They tried to help them. There were efforts done. But I mean, to your point, Christina, though, it is interesting how much we don't tell people or don't educate our population because that's what we're doing when you're going to school. You're learning to be a member of the community,
Right. And I
I
and we're
don't
think
know
what
if
not.
it
it's
is
interesting or
like,
if it's constructed that way, Karina, though. Because
yeah.
my
Oh no, I
argument
know it's
would
on
be is
purpose.
that
I'm
there's
aware.
a, yeah.
I'm aware there's an agenda.
And
Yeah.
I
Like,
think that's what like I was getting at is like I remember like that part, right? Of like you said, like the stories and stuff. But I don't remember learning anything else about it after that, right? Like it was just that small scope of like, hey, like this happened and like they did this and they did that. And then it's like,
And then pilgrims.
yeah, and then it just like kind of like shovels on to the next thing. So it's just
Yeah.
like crazy because like learning all this stuff now from like my peers and stuff, um, it's just like baffles me. I mean, like I told you, I'm like I feel like I live under a rock sometimes because I'm like there's just so much that I really just didn't know.
Hmm.
Yeah. When you're talking about like kids and how they learn it, so I have two kids. I have a son who's 12 and a daughter who's 6. And when my son was younger, he was probably 4. He went to preschool near the university where I teach, and I would pick him up after school. I'd take him there and then pick him up after school every day. And I picked him up and was just asking him in the car. He's probably 4 or something like that. He wasn't in kindergarten yet. And I was asking him what he learned about or what he did in school today, and he knew that I taught. And so he asked me after that, he was like, "What did you do?" Well, I was teaching a class on the early American Republic, so like post-revolution through the Civil War, basically.
Hmm.
And we were talking about the Trail of Tears. We were reading a book about John Ross and Jackson and that struggle between the Cherokee and the U.S. government. And I was hit with this moment where I'm like, I know so much about this and it's like terrible. It's awful. But like, how do I explain that to a kid who's 4 about it?
Hmm.
And it's like very clear, and like I tried to like put it in terms that he would understand about how like Jackson wanted to take their land and like anytime they would do something that to try to like make him happy, like the Americans happy with like how they were living, it wasn't good
Hmm.
enough. And he was just like, he sounds like a really bad person. Like
Yeah,
he
yeah,
got it, right? Like
yeah,
in a
yeah.
very basic way. But I was like really struck with like how do you explain this to a kid in terms that
Hmm.
they could understand, like the good and the bad.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's crazy how like I mean to that too, like just speaking with children, like when you speak to children, not necessarily like adults, right? Because like, we tend to modify like words, right? Instead of being like this guy is terrible, oh, this person was very unkind or whatever. But like they get the point. And I think what's crazy is like I'm sure with you coming out of it and him understanding what you were saying, like kids are so smart. They are
Hmm.
so smart and they can and have the capability of understanding if you can present it in a way that they can understand in their own way.
Oh yeah.
I love that. I think we don't talk about how we talk to children about things often enough. I think we just
oh,
kind of
really?
avoid that. Yeah. Because I think,
I feel like I talk about it with my sister a lot, but that's because of what we're both doing right now. Like I just talked to my sister about this earlier because kind of to Christina's point, I do like saying things to the kids that I nanny, I say whatever I want. And if I say a big word, I'll be like, "Do you know what that word means?" And then if they don't, then we talk about the word and then why we're doing it. But like I think it's important that they have all these other influences. You know what I mean? Like the other day I was talking to the kids and they were talking about weeds and we got into a whole discussion on who determines what is a weed and are weeds beneficial depending on the culture. You know what I mean? Like it was about pushing them to think critically about the things that they had been told, you know? Is that dandelion a weed or is it going to give you a tea to and a medicinal property and is it edible in case you need it to know that at some point in your life, you know? So I I I think it's a shame that America has decided to make our kids less and less knowledgeable.
No, I
Yeah.
fully agree. I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, that's the reason I started this podcast because I was like, I don't think I know I don't know enough, and I've learned
Yeah.
enough that I want to keep it going, and I think other people would be interested to learn along with us because
Hmm.
we could be
But
ignorant to it or we could learn.
I think the kids, like you said, Karina, I think the kids are capable. The
Oh,
kids
yeah,
are
you're
100% capable. On Monday, when I'm with my kids for the whole day, we will be listening to the podcast because they are off for Columbus Day, and I threw a fit about it not being Indigenous Peoples Day. I mean, an absolute fit. So we will be having a whole conversation about it.
I love that. That's so
But
fun.
I think it's having those conversations and like and
I love that Christina keeps
um
getting distracted right when you
sorry.
start talking
I
and
know,
cracks me up.
like Logan's like, "Mommy, can I have
It
this
always
candy?"
happens.
I don't know, I guess, dude.
I guess.
Uh, but like I don't know. I'm so for like and that's like one thing that like just heavily parenting, I guess. Like I'm always like don't say I don't like I say I don't know, but I'm like let's find out. But like
Hmm.
don't be like don't like shove it under the rug. Don't, like anytime they ask me something, I'm like tell them like I tell, family members, aunts, uncles, even my friends. I'm like if they ask you something, answer them. If they're asking you why this does this, answer them. Tell them why. And I think people, I mean, kind of like you're saying already, like, you just can't be bothered, right? And it's just like kids aren't dumb. Never. Like,
Hmm.
you have to, in order for their brains to grow, like, you have to feed their brains. Like, you have to give them knowledge and, like,
Well, and I legitimately think they enjoy it too.
oh,
Oh,
yeah.
they
Because
do.
like
100%.
those boys do not stop asking me questions. Randy, have you heard about this? Have you played this song? You know, that they're coming at me from 10 different angles. I really do think they benefit so much in so many different ways. You know, it just sparks that curiosity even more when people actually give them answers.
For
Yeah.
Well, I
sure.
think it goes back to treating children like people.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think
The
that
bare
question of
minimum, as we
why,
do.
that question of why is really powerful too,
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that like if you encourage it, you're gonna want to dig deeper and know more.
I mean, that's the thing though. Like, I want to learn more because I love learning. And if a child is always constantly talked down to when they ask questions, you're not ever going to want to discover anything new again because every time you do, you're in trouble. So I think engaging with them and talking to them like human beings is how they grow as people. They're learning from us. They need us to learn. They ask why because they don't know. Like,
But I feel like being a part of this helps me grow as a person personally. Like I
Hmm.
said, like I just feel like I don't know a lot of things and like just, mom life and everything. Like I don't feel like I always have the time to really go out of my way, right? To find stuff and sometimes life just gets hectic. And so it is like for me, it's very nice and refreshing to have a conversation with my friends and learn something new and hear those different perspectives and like see what you guys know. Because I literally, when I make them faces, guys, it's for real. Like I did not know whatever you're talking about. I'm like, it's news to me. And so it's, um, I don't know. I just like I don't want to say I feel out of touch, but like in a sense, I kind of do. Like I'm just usually in my own little bubble in my own little world, and um, it's really like interesting to see things from like y'all's perspective coming as like an Asian American and like, my parents are first generation immigrants and stuff like that and just really learning the history of everything.
I mean, and that's why I did it because I was like, we all come from different places. Everyone is showing up to the world currently from a different place. How did we get here? What are we doing? And what are we doing to move forward? What are we doing to build community? What are we building to support each other? I think that's one of the biggest questions that we could all be like all of the biggest questions we could be asking each other right now. What are we doing to support each other in our community? And that includes our children who are also part of the community and will be, taking over one day. Okay, I'm gonna go back to Roanoke though, guys.
Sorry.
But no, that was a phenomenal. I love that. I think that was a great conversation. Like it's one of those that needs to be had, and it's one of my favorite parts of this podcast is that we get to go ask those questions that we may not think about asking or like have a group that we can communicate with about different big things. Because these are topics that we don't talk about enough. And I don't think most friend groups are like, hey guys, how did the Roanoke Island colonization impact how we feel about people today? Anyway. Okay, so recently, a private group called the Lost Colony Center for Science and Research have worked on using archaeology, history, and science to explore Roanoke and Hatteras Island, which is what Croatoan Island is known as now, as well as in neighboring indigenous communities to figure out what happened to these people. They did find Algonquin pottery and a copper ring made with European techniques, providing solid evidence of contact between the indigenous and the colonists at the time. Like, that doesn't mean they live there, that just means like they have some of their stuff. They did find English objects that were able to be traced back to the time to that era on Hatteras Island, so on Croatoan. But so this adds weight to the idea that the colonists might have moved to Croatoan Island, where they said they were going and nobody checked until like 40 years later. No confirmed human remains linked to the 1587 colony have been found on Roanoke. The island has continued to have a steady erosion rate where it lost 928 feet from 1851 to 1970. The northern shoreline has suffered from significant erosion, meaning that that part of the original settlement is probably underwater at this point. And with global warming, it will be 100% underwater probably very soon. The National Park Service established Fort Raleigh National Historic Site in 1941 to preserve the site of the original fort and protect it from the natural and human damage. There has been a push to use DNA testing and family history to find possible descendants of the Roanoke settlers, with Lost Colony-wide DNA project launching in 2007. Unfortunately, no confirmed family ties for the colonists have been made, so it's hard to have a family to compare to. And under the Native American Graves Protection and Reparation Act, scientists can't just go and pick random indigenous grave sites to just test for DNA. So there's kind of hard to like have people to test towards and have like older generations to test to figure out where they went. So the island does have its own urban legends. One of them from ghostcitytours.com talks about a woman, what's her name? John White's granddaughter, Virginia Day, who grew up with the Croatoan tribe after the colony supposedly fled. So they left, they lived with the tribe, and she grew up to be super beautiful. So she gained the attention of many suitors, one being a native witch doctor named Chico. But her heart was not for him. I literally took this from the website because I loved how they wrote it. She rejected his advancements, and in anger, he transformed her into a white doe. Okisko, a chieftain who had also fallen for the maiden, was desperate to return Virginia to her human self because she was a deer. He had a pearl tip arrow made by a native magician who would transform her back once it pierced her heart. Another chieftain had gotten word that the white doe had set out So another guy heard about it and he came out to kill her with his silver arrow to mark him as a warrior to his people. Both men had managed to track the doe at the same time. With steady hands, they drew their bows and released their magical arrows. The arrows pierced the creature's heart. The pearl arrow restored Virginia to her human form, but the silver one took her life. Well, that's sad. To this day, people have reported glimpses of a white doe in the forest only to disappear in the thick brush. Could it be the spirit of Virginia Day, the last true remnant of Roanoke? Only the white doe knows. That's so sad. I
This
would
is
hate to be
gonna be like
stuck.
the legend of the white buffalo, but okay.
But
Like people
okay.
don't know about albinism.
Next time, please tell us about the legend of the white buffalo because I don't know, Randy.
Oh, okay.
So
I'll think about it.
I'll think about it. I'll contemplate. English explorer John Lawson reported in 1609 seeing a ghost ship floating in the water when he visited the Outer Banks around Roanoke Island. As people have continued sharing these stories of seeing ghost ships in the area, they claim that it is the phantom ship of the lost Sir Walter Raleigh and his crew making their way back to England and they got lost. And I'm like, he didn't even go there. He just went for sassafras. And he probably didn't go because Greg thought if Greg is right and they thought of him as like extensions of themselves, he just never made it over there. He just sent some guy. Anyway, just thinking about it now. So if you decide to visit the Roanoke Island, you can also visit the ship. It's called Elizabeth II, Elizabeth II. It is a moored replica of the original vessel where you can swab the deck, explore the ship, and meet the crew. I kind of want to go, honestly. You can visit the live reenactments of like the indigenous like the indigenous villages and the fort, so you can go see it and meet the crew, meet everybody that lives there. And you can also go to the museum and gift shop. That's what I learned about Roanoke, guys. I liked it, honestly. It was fascinating.
I like the idea of a cult better.
The fact that they were probably not adapted to survive and had everything against them is not fun.
I
Cult
just
is
want it
fun.
to be spookier.
I know. I'm sorry. And I tried. I looked. I was like, does anybody have any ghost stories about Roanoke? And I think they do like ghost tours, but I personally feel like the people left the island, they left a little note, nobody listened to the note, and it was just ignored. Because there are many, many people that are saying like around that area, there was a lot of light-skinned people indigenous people that were also super light-skinned with European features. But the reports are like sporadic, nobody knows. I think either they all died or they were like, the only way we can make it is if we ask for help from the neighboring villages. I think that's what happened. The cult is fun though.
Yeah, I'd rather it be a cult. I'd rather them like have taken apart their homes and gone into the forest to become one with the devil, and they did some sacred ritual,
That's what I would do, but
some Jonestown stuff, and then
uh,
just saying.
well, I loved it. No, I really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was super fun, and I am so glad to have all of you guys here with us. And Christina is currently blowing bubbles, so Mama never ends, guys. It's
Never.
a 24/7 job.
Logan brought his little bubbles and he goes, "Hi, friends. I'm blowing bubbles." And I'm like, "I'm muted, Logan. They cannot hear you."
I love that he's putting on a show for us.
He's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I need you guys to see this. But anyway, any other last thoughts before we go, guys? No? Yes. As always, thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Sippin' Saga Society. If you have any histories, mysteries, or stories you think should be told, feel free to DM us on Instagram or Facebook at sipandsaga_society. Goodbye now. Bye.
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 Say bye, Greg.
Bye.